The Wild West, a time when legends were forged in gunpowder and dust. A land where outlaws and lawmen played a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, except the cats had revolvers and the mice had horses. Among the rogues, rustlers, and renegades, one name stands out in the tangled tapestry of Western infamy: Bill Doolin. If Butch Cassidy was the poster boy for outlaw chic, Doolin was the embodiment of bad guy with a cause. But don't be fooled. This wasn't some misunderstood anti-hero. No, Bill Doolin was a master of chaos with a sly grin and a fast hand. And today, we're diving headfirst into the wild, woolly, and just plain weird world of Bill Doolin. Humble beginnings. Our tale begins in 1858 in Johnson County, Arkansas. Back when humble beginnings really just meant you didn't have shoes until your 10th birthday. William Bill Doolin was born to an ordinary family of farmers, but as we've learned from every good outlaw story, working the land doesn't always scratch that itch for adventure, or in Bill's case, the itch for, robbing banks. Bill was one of those kids who, as they say, had a natural curiosity, except instead of asking why the sky was blue, he was more likely to wonder how fast he could ride a horse out of town after looting the general store. Still, his early years were mostly uneventful. He worked as a cowboy, earning an honest living wrangling cattle across the plains. But like many good men, he eventually grew tired of the honest life. Or in Bill's case, bored. And let's face it, there's only so much cattle driving you can do before you start thinking, why am I wrangling these cows when I could be wrangling cash? Enter the Wild Bunch. Doolin's slide into the life of crime began with an invitation he simply couldn't refuse. In 1891, Bill joined forces with the infamous Dalton Gang, a group of outlaws who made Jesse James look like a neighborhood prankster. Bill's involvement with the Daltons was short-lived, but he made a name for himself as a reliable member. He participated in robberies, including a particularly daring train heist. This was the point where Bill discovered his true passion. Not cattle, not the open range, but pure, unadulterated mayhem. However, after the disastrous 1892 Coffeyville raid, where most of the Dalton Gang was wiped out in a hail of bullets, seriously, it was like a Quentin Tarantino movie, but with worse aim, Bill made his exit, alive and with a pocketful of lessons on how not to rob a bank. The Doolin Gang. With the Dalton Gang now little more than a historical footnote, Bill Doolin decided to start his own outfit, which came to be known as the Wild Bunch. Different from Butch Cassidy's similarly named crew, but just as notorious. Think of the Wild Bunch as the Ocean's 11 of the Wild West, only with more mustaches and fewer tuxedos. Bill's Wild Bunch was a ragtag group of outlaws, each with their own peculiar talents. There was George Bitter Creek Newcomb, who, with a name like that, you knew wasn't winning any optimism contests. Then there was Bill Tulsa Jack Blake, who specialized in robbing trains and probably had a thing for naming cities after himself. And of course, there was Little Britches. No, not a child, but a young woman named Jenny Stevens who joined the gang and proved that the Wild West wasn't just a boys' club. Together, they cut a path of destruction across the Midwest, robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches like they were collecting stamps in some bizarre outlaw scavenger hunt. Doolin and his gang were so successful at causing chaos that they quickly gained a reputation. Wild Bunch Mayhem. Now, what made Bill Doolin's Wild Bunch so notorious wasn't just their frequent bank robberies. It was their sheer audacity and knack for creative lawbreaking. These guys didn't just roll into town, grab the cash, and gallop off into the sunset. No, the Wild Bunch liked to make a spectacle of their heists. For starters, they had a habit of robbing places not just once, but coming back for a second helping. Imagine the shock of a town, thinking they'd seen the last of Doolin's gang, only for them to saunter back in a few months later, guns drawn, asking for seconds like they were at an outlaw buffet. One of their most famous heists took place in 1893 when they hit a train near Cimarron, Kansas. Now, robbing a train in the 1890s was a bold move, but Doolin's gang went the extra mile. After stopping the train, they didn't just loot the passengers and cargo, they even posed for photos with their spoils. That's right, they had the gall to take a keepsake from their crime spree, all but autographing the crime scene. Another of their more daring escapades happened in southwest Kansas, where they knocked over a bank in the town of Spearville. The wild bunch not only cleaned out the bank's safe, but as they fled, they generously scattered coins across the streets, either as a distraction or as some twisted version of charity. The gang's reign of terror stretched across several states: Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, basically anywhere that had money to steal and lawmen slow on the draw. Doolin and his band of outlaws were experts at disappearing into the vast, unforgiving landscape of the frontier, leaving frustrated sheriffs and marshals in their wake, clutching at wanted posters while the wild bunch galloped off into legend. The law strikes back. Of course, no outlaw's reign lasts forever, and Bill Doolin's luck began to run dry faster than a desert creek. By the mid-1890s, he had the full attention of the law, which was tired of his gang's antics. Enter Marshal Heck Thomas, a lawman with a name that sounds like he could wrestle a grizzly bear and then write a sonnet about it. Heck Thomas was part of a team known as the Three Guardsmen, a trio of relentless lawmen whose sole mission was to bring down the wild bunch. You could say they were like the Avengers, if the Avengers were grumpy, gunslinging, whiskey-drinking lawmen who didn't care for spandex. Doolin was captured in 1895 after a lengthy chase, and it seemed like his days of robbing banks were behind him. But Bill Doolin wasn't about to let a little thing like jail stop him. No, sir. Like any good outlaw, he promptly escaped, proving that even when locked up, he still had more moves than a square dance caller. His escape earned him even more notoriety, and once again, he was back on the run. The final ride. Now, here's where things start to go downhill for Old Bill. After his daring escape from jail in 1895, Doolin went right back to his old ways, robbing banks. But by this point, the heat on him was intense. Marshal Heck Thomas, along with other famed lawmen like Chris Madsen and Bill Tiltman, wasn't just playing cops and robbers. They were waging a full-on manhunt to track down Doolin and the remnants of his wild bunch. Bill wasn't just an outlaw anymore, he was public enemy number one. For nearly a year, Doolin led lawmen on a wild goose chase, slipping through their fingers time and again. He took refuge in the vast plains of Oklahoma, hiding out in remote farmhouses and small towns, always keeping one step ahead of the law. But even the most elusive outlaws eventually run out of luck, and Bill's was running thin. In the summer of 1896, Doolin was tracked to a ranch near Lawson, Oklahoma. By this time, he had been battling rheumatoid arthritis, which made his once fast reflexes slower, and his ability to stay mobile was dwindling. Heck Thomas got word of his location and wasn't about to let Bill get away again. Thomas led a posse straight to the ranch, surrounding it in the dead of night. As Doolin stepped out the door, possibly unaware that this would be his final ride, Thomas and his men unleashed a barrage of gunfire. Doolin was hit multiple times before he had a chance to even draw his weapon. Some say he went down fighting, while others claim he never had the opportunity to make a move. Either way, his outlaw days ended not with a grand shootout, but with a calculated takedown orchestrated by one of the most relentless lawmen in the West. After years of dodging bullets, escaping jails, and robbing banks, Bill Doolin's time had finally run out. Legacy of a bandit. So what do we make of Bill Doolin? Well, like many outlaws of his time, he lived fast, died young, and left a legend behind. He wasn't as famous as Jesse James or as charismatic as Butch Cassidy, but Doolin had a kind of scrappy determination that's hard not to admire. He may have been a criminal, but in the Wild West, that was often just another way of saying entrepreneur. His legacy lives on in the stories of the Wild Bunch, a band of outlaws who defied the law, taunted their pursuers, and stole more than just money. They stole the headlines. Bill Doolin may not have gotten away with it in the end, but for a while there, he sure made life in the Wild West a lot more interesting. And that, my friends, is the story of Bill Doolin, outlaw, escape artist, and certified thorn in the side of the law. If you enjoyed this ride through history's wild side, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which Wild West outlaw you'd like to hear about next.